Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Returns to Africa. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, just like I said last week, we're just beginning to finally wrap up our time in the Okavango Delta. Thankfully, I think all the camping gear and equipment has finally been packed up because it's time to move on to our next destination, which, as I promised from last week, I will reveal at the end of today's episode. So let's get back into the lives of the African wild dog, or Lycaon pictus. But as always, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page for content on conservation. And if you have a question about animals, or if there's an animal that you want me to do in the future, you just have to send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in the description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's continue with the hunt. Let's start off with the wild things. Now, if you remember from last week, I mentioned about how the dew claw, or that's the fifth digit on a dog's paw, is missing from the African wild dog. This has actually, as I mentioned last week, this has actually allowed them to be able to run much quicker than that of other canines. And so this may be a useful feature, especially for when they go hunting either the big prey like the wildebeest, the zebras, or the medium-sized antelopes. Now, here's a cool thing about after the hunt. So, now I'm sure you know that you think that at the table, the adults should eat first and the kids are next. Not for the wild dogs. As I mentioned before, they are devoted to family life. And so, as a way of proving it, they actually will allow the kids, or in this case the pups, to eat first. And they have this privilege right up until they're at least a year old. Hey, pretty soon you gotta wean them off of certain bits. And now, I bet you didn't know that they could actually vote. No, I'm not talking political votes like for government or for the next president or for the next term. Nothing like that. African wild dogs have been documented actually doing a kind of sneezing activity that enables them to vote on whether they go on a hunt or not. It's not a real chew. It's just more like a kind of sound that they make by giving a very quick exhale through their nose. The more exhales that they commit, the more chances that the pack will go off on a hunt to bring back food and leave one of the adults to stay behind and act as babysitter. Now, unfortunately, as I said last week, these creatures are truly one of the most endangered species of wildlife in all of Africa. You know, if you remember from last week, I showed you that map of where they once used to roam and where they roam today. Here's where they roam today, and as you can see, these areas and populations are living in highly fragmented spaces, or habitat fragmentation. If you remember that, or are not sure what that means, that's an area where once nature was all connected, certain things are blocking the way. Let's just say a highway or human settlements. As a result, the animals can't really seem to cross through safely to get to other populations. And as a result, unfortunately, inbreeding has actually begun to affect the population. Now, generally, the males stay within the pack their entire lives, while the females, actually, once they reach adulthood, they will go off and find their own packs to live in. But now, because of the inbreeding going on, that means there's just not enough non-related animals for each other to try to meet up with and breed for the next generation. And so that's affecting their populations heavily. And it kind of also seems to make it a harder challenge with managing them in human care, such as zoos or wildlife parks. However, there is hope for the species. Despite their numbers not looking too well, there is still hope for the African wild dogs. The African Wild Dog Conservation or Conservancy began working in 2003 to conserve the African wild dog in the northeastern and coastal Kenya, which was seen as a bit of a high biodiversity hotspot. This area is mostly inhabited by pastoralists. And so, with the help of the local people, pilot studies were launched confirming the presence of populations of wild dogs that were actually unknown to conservationists. Over the next 16 years, local ecological knowledge revealed this area to be a significant refuge for African wild dogs and even an important wildlife corridor which connected Kenya's Tsavo National Park with the Horn of Africa in an increasingly human-dominated landscape. So, despite the African wild dog having a bit of a hard time, as I'm going to just say it one more time, there is hope for the species. We just have to continue to figure out other ways that we can get along with this animal and make a better connection so that these guys don't have to end up in extinction. Because it is thought that they could probably become extinct within the next 100 years. So there's really no other good reason why we should force this animal out of this habitat or into extinction. And so, by conservationists and the local people working together to come up with many different solutions, as well as try to find other dogs to try to increase genetic diversity all throughout the continent, it looks like this dog might still have a place to run after all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've all waited, and I thank you for your patience. We are actually leaving the continent of Africa for just a brief moment to go to one of its next door neighbors, the island nation of Madagascar, where for the next couple of episodes, we'll hang out with both the lemurs and one of the top mammal predators on the island nation, the fossa. But until next week, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.